morning sun bathed the city skyline as Christopher Carter, a renowned architect, adjusted the cufflinks of his tailored suit. At just 33 years old, Christopher had achieved what many could only dream of. As the principal architect behind several iconic skyscrapers, he was celebrated not only for his visionary designs, but also for his remarkable success in the industry. This was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. In just a few hours, he would marry Sophia Harper, a socialite and businesswoman known for her impeccable style and charm. The wedding was a spectacle of luxury and sophistication, with reporters already gathered outside the venue, eager to capture every detail. Despite the glamour surrounding him, Christopher couldn't shake a lingering unease. Standing in front of the mirror, he tightened his tie one more time, trying to suppress the gnawing doubt in his chest. Sophia had always been supportive, or at least that's how it appeared. Lately, her focus seemed to drift more toward her appearances in society columns than building a life together. "I need some air," Christopher muttered to himself. Grabbing the keys to his sleek black sports car, he slipped out before anyone could stop him. The winding coastal road had always been his escape, a place to clear his mind and find clarity. But clarity never came. As Christopher rounded a curve, a stray dog darted into the road. Swerving to avoid it, he lost control of the car. The world spiraled into chaos as metal crumpled and glass shattered. His last memory, before darkness consumed him, was the sunlight breaking through the jagged windshield. At St. Mary's Hospital, life in the intensive care unit moved with a steady rhythm. Among the staff was Megan Walsh, a 27-year-old nurse known for her warm smile and gentle demeanor. Megan had always believed that healing wasn't just about medicine, it was about compassion. She often stayed late after shifts, offering a kind word or extra care to patients who seemed particularly isolated. When Christopher Carter was rushed into the ICU, his arrival caused a stir. Nurses whispered about the renowned architect who should have been at his wedding that day. Megan first noticed him during her rounds. He lay motionless in room 207, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, their monotony a stark contrast to the man's once vibrant life. His room was filled with extravagant flower arrangements and handwritten notes, yet something felt absent. Megan couldn't help but feel that these gestures were meant more for appearances than genuine care. That evening, as she adjusted the IV drip by his bedside, Megan glanced at the book she had tucked into her pocket, a well-loved copy of The Little Prince. She hesitated for a moment, then sat in the chair beside him. "Mr. Carter," she began softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I thought I'd read to you for a while. This is my favorite book. It's about seeing what really matters in life." Her words filled the silent room, her voice steady and soothing as she began to read aloud. Though Christopher showed no response, Megan felt compelled to continue. Over the days that followed, reading became part of her nightly routine. After finishing her duties, she would sit by his side with a new book, her voice carrying warmth into the sterile room. She read stories of adventure, love, and resilience, choosing tales that she hoped would inspire a spark within him. One night, as Megan turned the last page of Don Quixote, she noticed something. A subtle twitch in Christopher's hand. Her breath caught. Could it have been an involuntary movement? Or had he, even in the depths of his unconsciousness, responded to her words? Megan pressed her fingers gently over his, her heart racing with a mix of hope and disbelief. The doctors dismissed it as reflexive, but Megan wasn't so sure. "It doesn't matter," she told herself. "I'll keep talking to him." The next evening, she returned with a renewed sense of purpose. As she adjusted the blanket over him, she leaned closer. "You're not alone, Mr. Carter," she whispered. "I'll be here, reading to you, until you're ready to wake up." As days turned into weeks, Christopher Carter's room in the ICU became a quiet refuge from the bustling hospital. Megan Walsh, ever dedicated, continued her nightly readings, believing in the healing power of words. While the outside world speculated about Christopher's fate, something far more insidious was happening behind closed doors. Christopher's older brother, Nathan Carter, began frequenting the hospital, always accompanied by lawyers and thick stacks of documents. Though his visits were brief and businesslike, Nathan's presence filled the air with unease. One afternoon, as Megan prepared to administer medication to Christopher, she overheard a hushed but heated conversation just outside the room. Nathan's sharp voice cut through the corridor. "We need to finalize this now," he hissed. "The investors are getting impatient. The board is ready to sign off on dissolving his flagship project. There's no point in delaying." Another voice responded. Sophia Harper, Christopher's fiancée. "I've done everything I can," she snapped. "But how long am I supposed to keep up appearances? If he doesn't wake up soon, we'll need to move forward, with or without him." Megan froze, her heart pounding. Their words painted a grim picture. They weren't worried about Christopher's recovery. They were using his absence to dismantle the company he had worked so hard to build. For a moment, Megan hesitated. Should she confront them? Should she tell someone? But then she glanced at Christopher, lying motionless but peaceful. No, she thought. He needed to know. That evening, as the hospital quieted down, Megan returned to his room. The dim light cast soft shadows across Christopher's face. Sitting in her usual chair, she placed a hand gently on his. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know if you can hear me, but something's not right. Your brother and Sophia, they're planning something. I don't know all the details, but you need to wake up. There's so much at stake." Her words hung in the air, heavy with urgency. For the first time, Megan felt truly helpless. She had no proof, no power, just a growing determination to protect a man she barely knew. The next morning, Nathan and Sophia returned, their smiles cold and calculated. Megan stayed nearby, quietly observing their every move. As Nathan slipped a set of documents into Christopher's room, Megan's suspicions deepened. "You're not alone in this," she whispered to Christopher later that evening. "I'll keep watching, and I'll keep reading. You just need to wake up." Though his body remained still, Megan thought she saw something flicker across Christopher's face, a faint shadow of determination, as if her words were reaching him somewhere deep inside. Weeks turned into months, and Christopher Carter remained in a coma, though subtle changes in his condition hinted at progress. Megan Walsh continued her nightly vigil, reading stories of courage and resilience while keeping a watchful eye on Nathan and Sophia. One night, while reading a particularly moving passage from the Count of Monte Cristo, Megan paused to adjust Christopher's blanket. As she leaned closer, she noticed something astonishing. His eyelids fluttered. "Christopher?" she whispered, barely daring to hope. His fingers twitched slightly, and Megan's heart raced. She pressed the call button, summoning the medical team. Within minutes, doctors and nurses flooded the room, their faces a mix of excitement and cautious optimism. Over the next few days, Christopher's consciousness began to emerge. His eyes, though unfocused at first, started to track movement. Megan was there for every milestone, her quiet encouragement a constant presence. The first time he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Where am I?" "You're at St. Mary's Hospital," Megan replied gently. "You've been here for a while, but you're getting stronger." Christopher's recovery accelerated, but so did Nathan and Sophia's schemes. Unaware that Christopher was regaining his faculties, they continued their visits, maintaining the facade of concern. Megan observed everything, carefully documenting what she overheard. For Christopher, every new piece of information brought a mix of betrayal and resolve. He had lost months of his life, but he wasn't going to lose what he had built. "It's time to fight back," he told Megan one evening, his voice steadier than she had ever heard before. One afternoon, Nathan entered the room with a stack of papers. "Chris," he said, feigning warmth, "I need you to sign these. It's just routine paperwork to keep things running smoothly while you recover." Christopher, still weak, glanced at the documents. Something in Nathan's tone set off alarms in his mind. He looked to Megan, who stood nearby, her expression unreadable, but her eyes brimming with resolve. "Now," Christopher said hoarsely, "I'm too tired." Nathan's smile faltered, but he masked his irritation. Of course. We'll talk later. As soon as Nathan left, Christopher turned to Megan. What's going on? He asked, his voice stronger now. Megan hesitated, then stepped closer. Nathan and Sophia. They've been making decisions about your company without your consent. I've overheard their conversations. They're planning to sell one of your major projects. Christopher's jaw tightened. Despite his physical weakness, his mind was sharp, and his determination burned brighter than ever. I need to know everything, he said. Megan nodded. I've kept notes on what I've seen and heard. And I think you can trust your lawyer, Mr. Sullivan. Nathan had him removed, but I heard he's still loyal to you. That night, Christopher made his first secret call using Megan's phone. His trusted lawyer, Patrick Sullivan, immediately began piecing together the evidence. As the pieces of the puzzle started to align, Christopher realized the full extent of the betrayal. Nathan's power grabs and Sophia's involvement with a rival company were no longer speculation. They were calculated moves to strip him of everything he had built. You've done so much for me, Christopher said to Megan one evening. I don't even know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me, she replied softly. Just fight back. You have people counting on you. And with that, Christopher's resolve solidified. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for everyone who believed in him. The day had come. After weeks of gathering evidence, Christopher Carter was ready to confront his brother Nathan and his former fiancée, Sophia Harper. The ICU room that had been a place of quiet recovery was now transformed into the backdrop for a pivotal showdown. That morning, Christopher sat in a chair by the window, his posture deceptively relaxed. Though his body was still recovering, his mind was sharper than ever. Megan Walsh, standing by the doorway, had ensured that every detail of the plan was in place. At exactly 9 a.m., Nathan arrived, flanked by 2 lawyers and holding yet another stack of documents. His confident demeanor suggested he believed his brother was still too weak to resist. Good morning, Chris, Nathan said, his voice syrupy with false concern. I brought some paperwork for you to sign, just a few things to ensure everything runs smoothly. Christopher glanced at the documents, then back at Nathan, his face calm but unreadable. Of course, Nathan, he replied, but I thought it might be wise to have some other eyes on these matters. Before Nathan could respond, the door opened again. This time, Patrick Sullivan, Christopher's trusted lawyer, walked in, followed by several members of the board from Christopher's architecture firm. Their arrival wiped the smug smile off Nathan's face. What is this? Nathan demanded, his tone sharp and defensive. Christopher stood slowly, using the chair for support but radiating authority. This, he said, is the end of your little game. Over the next hour, Patrick presented the meticulously gathered evidence. Bank transfers, confidential emails, and witness statements painted a damning picture of Nathan's betrayal. Even Sophia's involvement was laid bare. Her meetings with rival companies, her discreet financial dealings, and her blatant disregard for Christopher's recovery. This is absurd, Nathan shouted, his composure cracking. Everything I've done was to protect the company while you were incapacitated. Christopher's voice remained steady, but there was no mistaking the hurt in his eyes. Protect the company? You mean sell off my flagship project and line your pockets with the proceeds? He turned to Sophia. Sophia stammered, her carefully constructed poise beginning to crumble. I only did what I thought was necessary. You weren't waking up, Christopher. I had no choice. But her eyes betrayed her, revealing a desperation born not of love but of self-preservation. Sophia tried to stammer out a defense, but the room's collective silence spoke louder than any words. The board members exchanged glances, their disbelief giving way to determination. Nathan Carter, one of them finally said, your actions are inexcusable. Effective immediately, you're removed from all positions within the company. A full investigation will follow. Nathan's face turned pale, his protests ignored. Sophia, realizing the cameras she once loved would soon capture her disgrace, stormed out without another word. As the room emptied, Christopher leaned back in his chair, the weight of the confrontation visible on his face. Megan approached cautiously, her presence a quiet comfort. "You did it," she said softly. "No," Christopher replied, meeting her gaze. "We did it." For the first time in months, he allowed himself a small, genuine smile. The fight wasn't over. There were still legal battles to face and a company to rebuild. But for now, Christopher could finally breathe. A week after the confrontation, Christopher Carter stood in the garden of St. Mary's Hospital, breathing in the crisp morning air. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over the place that had become both his prison and sanctuary. Beside him, Megan Walsh watched quietly. She had been there through everything: the betrayals, the recovery, the revelations. Now, as Christopher prepared to leave the hospital, there was a sense of finality in the air, yet also the promise of something new. "I still can't believe how much has happened," Christopher said, turning to Megan. "But through it all, you've been my anchor. I owe you more than I can ever repay." "You don't owe me anything," Megan replied with a small smile. "You fought for what mattered. You just needed a little push." Christopher chuckled, his gaze softening. "Maybe, but I want you to know, whatever comes next, I don't want to face it without you." Megan hesitated, her heart racing, then nodded. "I'll be here, whatever comes next." As they walked toward the hospital gates, side by side, the future stretched out before them. It wasn't just about rebuilding a company or reclaiming a reputation. It was about starting a life built on trust, resilience, and something neither of them had expected to find: love. A month had passed since Christopher Carter had left St. Mary's Hospital. The once bustling ICU room that had witnessed betrayals, struggles, and moments of quiet resilience was now just a memory. In its place was a new chapter, one that Christopher and Megan Walsh were beginning to write together. Christopher threw himself into rebuilding his architecture firm, not just as a business, but as a beacon of integrity. Projects that had been shelved were revived, employees who had been loyal during his absence were rewarded, and his flagship initiative, a sustainable housing project, was relaunched with Megan as its inspiration. "It's about creating spaces where people feel safe, cared for," he explained to her one evening, his voice tinged with both determination and affection. Meanwhile, Megan found herself stepping into a new role as Christopher's confidant and partner. Despite her initial hesitation about fitting into his world, she discovered that her perspective and empathy brought a balance Christopher had never known before. One crisp autumn morning, Christopher surprised Megan with a visit to a piece of land overlooking the city. "This," he said, gesturing to the sprawling space, "is where our next chapter begins." Megan tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" Christopher took her hands, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to build something here. A home. Not just for me, but for us. A place where we can dream, plan, and create a future together." Megan felt tears prick her eyes. "Christopher, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me make it a reality," he replied with a soft smile. "Because I can't imagine building anything without you." Over the following months, their partnership grew beyond personal. Together, they established the Carter Foundation, an initiative dedicated to providing affordable housing and educational opportunities in underprivileged communities. Megan took charge of community outreach, while Christopher brought his architectural expertise to life-changing projects. Their bond deepened with every success, every challenge they faced, side by side. But the moment that truly sealed their future came one winter evening. Under the sparkling lights of the city, Christopher led Megan to the balcony of their newly completed home. "Megan," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "you walked into my life when I was at my lowest. You gave me hope when I had none. I still remember the sound of your voice reading to me in that cold hospital room. It was the only light in my darkest days. And you've shown me that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, steady moments that build something unshakable. Will you marry me?" Megan's breath caught. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, laughing through her emotions. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. Their wedding, held months later, was a beautiful mix of elegance and simplicity, reflecting their journey. Surrounded by friends, family, and even former hospital colleagues, they exchanged vows that promised not just love, but partnership in every sense of the word. As they danced under the stars, Christopher whispered, "Thank you for helping me find my way." Megan smiled, leaning into him. "And thank you for showing me how much more I was capable of." Their story didn't end there. It was only the beginning of a life filled with purpose, shared dreams, and the understanding that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most beautiful journeys. If this story touched your heart and inspired you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Join us for more moving tales of resilience, love, and hope. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, let's keep the stories alive and spread positivity. Thank you for being part of our journey.